Welcome to the Future of Tourism podcast. I'm David Peacock.
Stop owning your own content.
Young leaders are stepping up.
Bring everyone to the table
and imagine their world anew.
While the global pandemic has accelerated the pace of change, it hasn't changed the technologies. More so, it has opened our minds to the kind of other problems and challenges we can solve with technology if we're just a little more flexible and far-sighted. Delivery, dining, meeting, working, they have all changed over the last 2 years, but again, more so because we opened ourselves up to the idea of using technology to do things we were not necessarily comfortable with before. We've been disrupted. We've come to terms with the machines and technologies that started the disruption. And now we're starting to see what we can do with these new tools beyond what we were already doing with them. That may sound a little reaching at a time when we're trying to restore balance and resilience, but if you've ever met, read about, or worked with my next guest, you will know that he's always been at the leading edge of deciphering what it is that technology can do that will make our lives significantly better. His early work at American Airlines and on the global Sabre reservation system, his groundbreaking startups like Orbitz and the NextTag search engine, and his newest venture, Journera, all take a long view of the future and work backwards. While that can sound complicated, Jeff Katz can break it down into the simplest of terms. When talking about the innovations we can bring to the travel industry well inside the next decade, he puts it quite simply. As travelers, we focus on the whole journey. None of us are just focused on the flight or the hotel. It's about the entire journey. And that is about as an apt place to start a discussion with media luminary, digital innovator, iconoclast, and disruptor, Jeffrey Katz. Hello, Jeffrey. How are you? Where are you? What's it like?
Thank you, first of all, for having me. I'm so excited to join you. I am sitting in Telluride, Colorado, quite literally at the end of a very snowed-in box canyon that looks a lot like my own private Yosemite.
That sounds pretty nice. Listen, I'm so happy to get a chance to talk to you. I'm really interested in your current work at Journera. Let's talk a little bit about Jeff Katz's history, though. Come on, you were an MIT grad. You're a Stanford grad. You were at MIT when?
I was at MIT at the end of the 70s, very early 80s. I literally left in 1980.
And that was with your engineering degree.
Yes, I studied in the aerospace school and the Sloan Management School, and my focus at the time was really the economic. I was very interested in transportation, the economics of transportation, and how do you. It was just that, it's an industry of moving parts, and if you're interested in math and the world, then transportation is a really ever fascinating place to pay attention.
Well, and we talked about, cross-pollination and disruption, but you were there also at a time that I think very famous professor Nicholas Negroponte was starting to build Idea Lab.
Yes.
Okay, and
yes.
I mean, maybe I'm just watching the movie the way I want to see it, but there's so much of that kind of thinking in Journera, and we're going to get to that. But it's about it's about serving. It's about digital becoming a personal tool for people that enriches their lives and solves problems. And I think back to that book, Being Digital. That was one of the key premises. We'd all have our own individual knowledge navigator.
Yeah. Well, he was way ahead of his time, and a lot of the world kind of started to revolve around him. And then people like me and many, many others, sort of went to work bringing ideas alive into our day.
Well, I want to talk about Journera, but the best way to do that is this. You can be a bit of a controvert, and sometimes you say things that I think are really helpful in that catalytic sense. And one of them is a statement that you're known to make: travel brands are not really focused on the customer. Am I fair to attribute that to a Jeff Katz saying?
Yeah, I guess Yeah, sure. It's true that I just had a conversation with the chief commercial officer of American Airlines, and he's so focused on changing that reality, that he really insists on calling customers humans, so that the massive American Airlines team and business can bring it back to this customer reality. So it is fair to say that travel brands get wrapped up in their underwear, which is to say flying the plane, keeping the crew there, cars that are safe and available. It's so big that it's easy to, if you're an executive at one of these brands, to translate everything to statistics rather than to customers. And I know a lot of these people who do a wonderful job making these companies go. We all benefit from a wonderful transportation system for the most part, very safe and super convenient. But we all know what it feels like to be out there, and it's not the lap of luxury.
Well, and here's the part that I really admire. Addressing that problem could be a technocratic, endeavor. And at some point in your life, it was. In your early days, you had to figure out the technology of timing and travel to become conversant in it and understand it. But the next phase of this is really helpful on two fronts. One, it enriches the life of the traveler, your vision of this. But two, I think it does something remarkable in this industry. You have talked about the evolution of travel being a series of silver tubes, how these things like hotels and airlines and attractions have become source tubes for one monetizing model. And I think the simplest thing I took away from my Jeff Katz lesson the other day was this. If you figure it out, you can monetize your own data. You can monetize it to grow your business. You can monetize it to improve your services. And that's what you're really talking about at Journera, isn't it?
That's what I'm talking about. That's right.
All right.
That's right. And if you don't do it, somebody else is doing it for you, and you're paying the bill.
All right. So that was my ineloquent explanation of what you're doing. Give us a look under the hood at Gennaros. Let's just get right into it.
Well, the vision of Journera has sort of two ideas. One is that when we travel, we always are on this journey that you mentioned. I fly somewhere, I stay somewhere, I drive someplace, I play golf, I eat a meal. This is all part of our journey. We never just do one element of that. Never. And so the real new frontier is in making the journey better. You can only do that if you understand that data and pull together what the journey looks like, and you do it in real time. The journey's always moving. And so the data can bring the journey together so you can use an understanding of that and make the travel experience smoother, better. That's the fundamental idea is this idea, seamless journey, make the journey better. And the second idea, this way more technocratic, is, and if we don't do this, then who else is doing it? Well, what I call the gatekeepers, and they're crazy, fantastic companies: Google, Facebook, Amazon. Google always starts with making a great experience first. That they never start with, I want to ship packages. They always say, I want to make a great experience. And before I do that, I got to organize the data. Once I organize the data, then I can do all kinds of things like drive cars with no drivers. So if travel brands don't say, hey, let me start to participate by organizing my data, by valuing my data, by deciding who can use it and who can't. Once you start there, then the world opens up. You can make travel seamless. You can make more money. You can have better partnerships. You can, when Jeff Katz boards the American Airlines flight, that's when I get the Hyatt digital room key without doing anything. It just happens. So Landline is a wonderful small company. They operate buses from Breckenridge, Colorado, a ski area in eastern Colorado, and they operate buses from Fort Collins. So what they've organized is a bunch of processes which allow you to clear security at the bus station. And once you've done all that stuff, you don't need to clear security at the airport or take the moving train or any of that stuff. You just get on the bus and you go to your gate. So that's what they do. What Journera does is two things. One is we can make all the things like your hotel key come to you, your boarding card come to you once you get on the bus.
do the airlines share their data in order to actually attract
Yes.
passengers?
Yes, that's the other thing. But so now between landline and let's say United Airlines, they can interchange information that says, hey, this person booked a hotel in Chicago. It looks like their origin is Colorado. Now landline can reach out with agreement with, all these companies and say, hey, instead of flying from Denver, take the bus from Breckenridge.
The other one you talked about is App in the Air. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh yeah, App in the Air is another. What you know, and those of us in the entrepreneur world know is smaller companies tend to be faster and they tend to be more courageous. And App in the Air is one of my favorite examples of this. They have a few million customers. App in the Air is one of these apps that organizes your itinerary. So if I book a hotel room and I book a restaurant reservation, I book an airline, you email your confirmation numbers to App in the Air, and then they organize it for you in their app. So you have a nice little digital itinerary that is your whole journey. That word journey. So what App in the Air does is it has organized through us to get your flight information automatically. So if you're an App in the Air user, you do nothing, but once I book my flight on, let's say, United Airlines, it automatically shows up in App in the Air, along with everything else that App in the Air can organize and facilitate to you. And that innovation, that focus on the journey, I think is not only fun, it's brilliant, and I think we'll see a lot more of that. But you can only do that if you have this vision of the journey and organize your data to make the journey come to life.
Well, but you touched on this in the security part. The other thing is, this is all doable as long as there's high level security that are agreed at basic principle level. So part of the Journera job then has got to be working out the agreements between partners so that they all hold a standard and making all. So it's really solving the problem of how to do this, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the so-called software architecture. And I'll say two things along that in line. What we do is make sure always, if App in the Air has a privacy agreement with Jeff Katz and United has a privacy agreement with Jeff Katz, we make sure those things are always in compliance for Jeff Katz. That's number one. So the agreements with App in the Air and the agreements with United, we're just make sure it's always complied with, number one. And the number two thing is, if I'm United Airlines, I'm going to let Gennaros send information about Jeff Katz encrypted to App in the Air, but I may only send 2 bits of data. I may send flight number and time. The rest of the stuff I know about Jeff Katz, I'm not sending.
At Journera, it's a small, tightly focused group. It's about 50 employees. Okay.
About 30.
About 30 employees. You're thinking about,
and we're all beautiful, by the way. We're all beautiful.
and live in the end of box canyons akin to Yosemite. I wish to visit you one day, sir. So you've got this team. Right now, I'm seeing a lot of data. It's sitting idle, and for good reasons. Everyone's afraid to share it because they don't want to be the person who gave away the treasure trove to the channel that monetized their data. You're saying this very clearly. You can monetize your own data, but here's the wrinkle. It's not like selling it. It's like doing things with it that increase the value of your company.
Correct.
That increases stickiness. Okay.
That's
so
correct.
You're doing that. Do you spend all your time in a balance between coming up what those ideas are to unlock that use of data, or the other half of the time programming, fixing? Like, is the hard part thinking about those applications, understanding, or are they all on the shelf waiting to happen?
Well, simply put, the hard part is in prioritizing that I want to do this because it will take me on a path for constant innovation that benefits my customer and me. That's the hard part. Now, to step back a half step, there is a lot of work in the technology. Jeff Katz spends 0 time on that because we have a magnificent team. That's what they do. And I did start. The very first sketch of our product was mine, but technical people made it so, and it's a beautiful piece of technology. I spend all my time trying to convince customers, do it. If you've got your own idea, do it. If you don't have an idea, here's one for you. that will change your world. And you try to be with senior people at companies who can make it so. But the tough part is prioritizing. Again, if you're a top airline executives, you're focused on safety. You're focused on the world of regulations, which are pretty onerous right now with COVID and Ukraine, and you can name your topics. You mean when I board the flight, I can get a room key? Why should I do that? Well, you do that because you can start a whole stream of new money, which is probably a several $billion. That's why, but you got to start. It doesn't start with $1 billion. I'll tell you, if I may digress for a second, when we first started, 1999, we first started this idea of electronic tickets. Remember this idea? There used to be paper tickets. When we first started to do that, the CEO of American Airlines told me to my face, nobody will ever use an electronic ticket. Now, paper tickets don't exist anymore. We all use our phone, right? That this is our authentication to get on this airplane.
So when you look at let's talk about destinations for a second, because the destination organization has been severely impacted by the pandemic. It's literally had to look at itself internally and say, what is our role and function in the community? Are we socially relevant? Are we sustainability champions, EDI champions, and all of those things, which my personal views lean towards they should be. What does the innovation you're talking about mean at a destination level?
I think in the beginning, right now, one of the intriguing things in the United States is that there's a lot of money flowing to destination organizations from the federal government, billions, and they're going to spend it. And their opportunity is to bring travel back to these destinations. So mission number one is bring travelers to my destination. Maybe I want to bring them to Montreal, maybe I want to bring them to Disney World. But that's number one. But to do that without just wasting these billions of dollars, you have to know who's my best prospect. And that is a data problem. And because of how we have our agreements with data, we have real-time data from the source of the data, which is the lodgers and the airlines and others, travel insurers, as another random example. And from that, you can see who might want to come to Montreal or Disney World. And by the way, I can do that by how valuable is that person. So that's number one, get the travelers back. And then the other thing that can begin to happen is how can I help funnel these destinations into the things that are really competitively valuable.
I'm going to give you a scenario, and this is totally unfair because your lane has not been destination organizations, but as a result of all the things you've done, Orbitz and the airlines, if you look forward to the next 10 years, how do you see a destination organization evolving to be a relevant player in the world that you picture 10 years out and travel?
Well, I'll make a few suggestions that are, again, maybe not the most, politic of, but first, I think some of the destination management organizations know-how needs to be brought back from the agency. All of this stuff is outsourced to capable large agencies to do the same thing for every destination. And so some of that know-how needs to be brought into the organization itself. Not affordable for every place, but a lot of these organizations are huge. They spend huge money. And number one there is going to be data science skill set of some kind. You can begin now to make the attributes of your destination flow into not just mass advertising, but you can make it flow into the relevant apps. You can take information about your destination that's relevant for Jeff Katz, flow out from, let's say, a restaurant app or Open Table or American Airlines app or Disney theme parks app. That's really what you want to do, is make that targeting, that money, that know-how that sort of ultimately benefits the destination. You want to flow it out like that. Because if you want to take knowledge about your destination and not make it flow out into ads on the internet or social media ads or YouTube ads or whatever, but now I want that relevant information to show up in the right place in the American Airlines app at the right time. That's a different skill set.
If we go then to your analogy of silver troops and what you basically said, a lot of great industry businesses like certain airlines and travel accommodation companies are being monetized at one end by the aggregator, and they become isolated silver tubes. They only work in their area. Are you saying that part of the data set of the destination has a value is who's in the destination and what those businesses are like?
You know, the key thing that a destination management organization has today is they have a budget. And they have relationships usually with lots of entities within their destination. Again, from venues to and airlines and you name it, they have important relationships. So they can take a point of view. The marketing buzzword is activate. How do I activate to benefit the destination the most? And benefiting the destination is like everybody there wins. That could be airlines win, venues win, sales taxes are collected, blah, 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 right? This is the ultimate strategy. So they have a budget, and now how do they activate today? They advertise, try to bring people there, and they have pretty blunt instruments. I can advertise on Google, I can advertise on Facebook, I can advertise various video channels, maybe even I do broadcast. That's a pretty blunt instrument in this day and age. And in the view of the journey, now I can begin to go more surgically after the Jeff Katz's, and I still have the same budget, but now I'm inspiring in a whole new way to come to my destination, and the destination can actually help. But to do that, you've got to bring some enhanced skill set into the DMO.
So then I'm going to say this, the term gross rating points does not have a home at Journera.
No.
Good.
That I would put that back in the category of covered wagons and travel agencies. That has reached its peak.
I'm excited for the work you're doing. There's always a good business case behind it. And you zeroed in on the advertising lane on this one for destinations. I think a lot of things have to change, but your words are really helpful and thoughtful there. Let's round this out by giving you the last word. What do you want to talk about in the industry? It doesn't have to be destinations, doesn't have to be airlines, just parting thoughts from Jeff Katz. It's been such a great pleasure to have you here to get inside your head.
Well, thank you. Look, I think we always win if we focus first and most on the traveler, the real traveling customer, because that's who we're trying to serve. That's who we're trying to see more of. That's sort of number one. Number two is, work at the journey. You'll make more money. You'll have more fun. You'll get more satisfaction, whatever your angle on travel is. Think about the journey, not just your selfish, perspective. And the third is you've got to get facile with the data you already have and begin to take control over how I use it, with whom, and for how much. And that can start with Excel, and it can move right out to Amazon Web Services or Journera. We're happy to help.